welcome to another episode of Decide Thought. I am your host today, Kilan. While we normally don't do many episodes based on television series, all members of Decide Thought are fans of the MCU. Naturally, we watched the Loki series when it began to air. While other channels have done their reviews of the episode, we're going to take a different tack. Simply put, unlike other channels, when we do a feature on recently aired episodes, we are going to look at one specific scene and go in depth on it. We will also be looking at theories and possible hidden clues within that scene. Before we go any further, if you haven't watched Loki episode 1, as should be clear, spoiler ahead. For today's review we will be diving into the following scene.
What? Infinity Stones?
We actually got a lot of those. Yeah, some of the guys use them as paperweights.
As can be guessed at by our title, we are focusing on the collection of Infinity Stones shown in this scene. However, there are three things to note before we get into that. First of all, is the Clark's declaration of others using them as paperweights. Other than simply implying that there are potentially many more Infinity Stones in the area, it means our numbers later will be off as we only see the stones shown here. Secondly, it is important to note that at the end of the scene, Loki is holding a time stone, but is not shown putting it back. This might lead to how at least that Infinity Stone returns to the MCU. Lastly, while the MCU takes from the comics, it doesn't fully follow the comics. In the comics it is explained that the Infinity Stones only work in their home universe. Here, we see that the Infinity Stones are inactive, by the fact that the glow within the stones doesn't shift like they do in the movies, but we aren't told why. In fact, if all these Infinity Stones are from variants of the main MCU universe before the changed timeline redlined, explained as becoming its own universe, then that means that any or all of these stones could work if brought back to the main MCU timeline. Looking at the contents in the drawer, there are many items that are Easter eggs, such as the poker chip or the coiled wires being potentially connections to the first Iron Man movie. There are however many other items that have no Easter egg value, but rather historical significance, such as the cross, medal and trading card. Of course, we're not here to talk about those. We're here to focus on the stones themselves, how they got there, and why the specific amount of each stone. Going from most numerous to least, we naturally have the time stone taking first place as the most common, with there being 7 shown. Being as that the time stone has the ability to change, affect, or even allow travel through time, it is clear why there are so many of them shown here. In second place we have the Reality Stone, with 6 of them presented. The Reality Stone's ability to reshape reality could easily be enough to cause drastic damage and changes to a timeline. This stone also makes absolute sense in how common it is in this scene. Third place gives us the Power Stone, with only 3 clearly represented. The Power Stone's high volatility, and level of danger in using, makes it a prime candidate to be more common. We assume that the reason there aren't more Power Stones is because, in most cases, the one who used it would have already destroyed themselves via the actions that would have caused the timeline to branch. Thus, the ones we see would have been confiscated from those who survived using the Power Stone, whereas if there was no surviving wielder, the timeline would have simply been reset with no items gathered, thus destroying those specific stones. Fourth place is tied between the Soul Stone and Space Stone, each only having 2 representatives. While it is unclear what precisely the Soul Stone's power is within the MCU, the fact that it is the only one of the Infinity Stones that required a price to be paid to attain it lends credence to its level of power. Apparently there would be a way to use the Soul Stone to disrupt the timeline, we simply don't know what that would be. Add in the fact that it is so difficult to attain, and that clearly explains why there are only 2 shown. As for the space stone, while only one stone is technically shown, the tesseract does hold the second space stone. The Loki series itself started by showing how the space stone could be used to disrupt the natural flow of time. As the example shown in the series specifically was connected to an outside action, this could explain why we only see two space stones. This brings us to last place. The Mind Stone. We find it surprising that there isn't a single Mind Stone represented. Taking into consideration that the Mind Stone allows the wielder to affect the minds of others, as shown in the Avengers, and that it was used to give a mind to vision, including memories. We are set to wonder why such uses couldn't, or rather haven't, caused disruptions in time. We have two theories though that would explain the absence of the Mind Stone. First, the Time Variance Authority may have added a specific command to the Mind Stone. Basically, if someone were to attempt to use the Mind Stone in a way that would break the timeline, this command would trigger and show the wielder what would happen if they were to continue with their actions, and show them how to remain within the sacred timeline. Our second theory may be more within the confines of the series. Namely, that of all the Infinity Stones, the Mind Stone may be the most dangerous to the Time Variance Authority. Okay, I know a lot of you are giving your screens an incredulous look at the moment, but let's walk through it a bit. The Mind Stone was used to give Vision life, and when he was activated he already had a lot of knowledge. From this we can assume that one power of the Mind Stone that hasn't been seen is that it has the capability to give a person all the knowledge of the universe. If one were to use the Mind Stone in such a way, they would immediately learn about the Time Variance Authority, but more importantly, they would learn how to avoid them, and possibly even fight back against them. Now, considering that we know for a fact that Loki has had possession of the Mind Stone, and that the variant the Time Variance Authority is after is a Loki variant. What if that Loki variant is specifically using their Mind Stone to plan their attacks on the Time Variance Authority Minutemen? It would certainly be quite a twist, especially considering how statements have been made that indicate the Infinity Stones wouldn't play a big role in Phase 4. By now some of you may have noticed that there appears to be 4 Power Stones, when I noted there were only 3. Did I make a mistake? No. In fact, this 4th Power Stone is the reason we chose this scene for this episode. Let's take a closer look at that 4th Power Stone. Unlike the other Power Stones which are clearly a solid purple, this final Power Stone has a tinge of blue in it. Enough blue in fact that it is distinctly different from the other Power Stones. Now, we at Decide are not the most comic knowledgeable people, but none of us have heard of 2 Infinity Stones being merged into a single stone. At least not without the Ego Stone, which doesn't yet exist within the MCU. This stone in specific, being both purple and blue, would appear to be a merging of a Power Stone and a Space Stone. Such a merged stone would clearly have more than enough power to disrupt a timeline, as it could be used to not just traverse space, but to traverse the multiverse. Thus, its appearance here is viable on its powers alone. However, the fact that a merged Infinity Stone could exist at all would in itself be a massive timeline disruption, meaning that its mere creation could be the variant shift that brought it here. More importantly to us though, is the mere concept of merged Infinity Stones. If we assume that this is a merged Infinity Stone, and the Ego Stone was not used to create it, then how was it merged? Can other Infinity Stones be merged? How would it change their powers? Could this be a hint at something coming in Phase 5 or later, such as the return of the Infinity Stones in a new form? Since it would certainly be fun to speculate, please comment below what Infinity Stone mergings you'd be interested in seeing, and what you think their combined powers would do which they wouldn't be capable of if used in conjunction but not merged. If you like our take, then tap that like button, and don't forget to caress the subscribe button and share on all media platforms, and remember, it's up to you to decide.